Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome. And we had a little bit of technical difficulties, but Rosann is figuring it out. She got it all figured out. So we've got Rosann here, and we are both in North Georgia. I think this time, though, I am slightly northern than you. Normally, you're a little northern than me, but I'm slightly northern than you, I think. So welcome, everybody. This is a different location for me. This is in very North Georgia, and we are talking this month about blooming days for flowers and vines. And I got to tell you, I keep telling Rosann, anytime we talk about flowers, I am so excited. I love it. So why, Rosann? Why is May flowers and vines?
It's got a long streak of just the right moon phase and just the right signs. And the blooming signs, luckily for us, occur sequentially. So first we have Virgo, or perhaps the bowels, and then we have Libra, or the scales. And sometimes you hear, I've heard Appalachians say the rains. And I thought, what is that? But it's the kidneys. If you look on that body, on the man of signs, the man of many signs, Libra is associated with the kidneys. Yeah, so we got a long stretch, and essentially it's going to run from, I think, the 15th. It starts on the 15th. It's that circled portion, and I can't see the bottom of it on my tiny little phone screen. And it runs all the way through. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days. And what's really cool about it this month is that, and every month really, is that right after Libra comes Scorpio, or the loins. And Scorpio is one of the top 3 signs to plant anything.
Really?
Yes. So
wait. Repeat that one more time, because
okay.
I this is new to me too. This is fantastic. So if you're ever confused, what is it again?
So Scorpio is called the loins, or you'll see a little scorpion there on your calendar, and it's one of the top 3 signs. The top 3 most fruitful signs are Scorpio, Pisces, and what I have forgotten, because I have scrambled at the last minute to get online. It'll come to me. Pisces. So what's lucky for flower lovers is that 3 signs come right together, and if the moon is in each sign about 2.5 days a month, that's really given us a streak. And this month, it's in the right moon phase. This month, the moon is waxing during that whole time. So you really could extend that 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, all the way out to the 21st and 22nd. So
that's fabulous. That's
the
weekend. That's the start of the weekend. It's the weekend and a couple days later. Because if you're like me, you get started cleaning up and then planning, and then you got to clean up again.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And so, May is when we all want our hands in the dirt. May is the time. And May is a complicated month. I mean, okay, we are lucky on flowers, but there's a lot of caveats this month. There's a lot of exceptions this month, when planting by the signs isn't as simple as the 2 rules. Find the right moon phase, waxing or waning, above waxing, below waning, and what is the fruitful sign, the most fruitful sign you can find. You can get your top 3, your Pisces, and Scorpio and Cancer, and the 2 other great signs that aren't watery signs. They're actually earthy signs. They're Taurus and Capricorn. But Capricorn is the workhorse. People have told me, if you want to build anything, if you want to build a garden beds or any kind of structures, Capricorn is really great for doing that. So, and I learned something fascinating this weekend in an astrological conference, and it was that that Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. So I knew that. I knew that as an intellectual construct. But what I didn't realize, if you go way, way, way back, I mean, if you go past the Romans, if you go past the Babylonians, if you go all the way back to Mesopotamia, the god of Saturn, the god that was associated with Saturn, was in charge of irrigation. And he wasn't just in charge of irrigation. I mean, can you imagine being in the desert and not being able to go to the grocery store, right?
No.
You have to grow your own food. And so what this particular god's power was that he was supposed to be able to crack open the rocks and divert water down. He could build irrigation channels. So
wow.
I'd never heard that before. I didn't know that little piece of ancient lore. And so that I realized it's like, oh, that's why all these millennia later, Appalachians say, build in Capricorn.
Building Capricorn, because
somewhere way back there, there was a god in charge of all this. So,
and this is, again, we're talking about traditions. You know, we love talking about our gardens. We love talking about planting, but the whole planting by the signs is a folklore tradition of our culture and our people. So I'm glad you brought that up, that's why they do it. They learned way back when.
Yeah, so Capricorn is if you have any trellises that you need to do, I'm putting in some raised beds, any kind of structural thing that related to gardening, that's a good time to do it.
And you know, I'm looking at the calendar.
And I think Capricorn, I think it's down maybe 25th, 26th. I can't see on my.
I see the 25th is the goat.
Yes, the goat.
And the knees. The goat and the knees. So the 25th and 26th, that is a good weekend. It's a weekend that you can do a big project building.
Yes, and the you can also plant then, because I think Capricorn is a really underrated sign. I've always had really good results in using that and Taurus. So we've talked about, and Taurus the bull. So, but this month Taurus is coming in at a really odd place. Taurus is coming in at the beginning of the month, and Taurus is still in that last quarter of the moon waning. Now, some people say, don't pay any attention to the moon. Do what the signs are saying. So if you can see on the 6th and the 7th, I've had some big question marks there, because some people say, no, don't, the moon is going out. There's not enough whatever power is there. I don't know why that is, but don't plant in that last quarter. Some people say, literally, I have quotes, don't pay attention to the moon. Plant when the sign is the best. So that's one of the complications in May and at the beginning of when we're just trying to get our stuff in the ground. I mean, the rest
we really are. The weather is nicer, and everybody's just trying to get out there. Can I pause for 1 second? Because I think it's really important. We're talking about the moon, and we're talking about signs, which is planting by the signs. And again, we're not talking about astrology as far as horoscope is concerned, and we're not really bringing the signs against religion. So I know that comes up a lot, and
it was the main question that the faculty that were working with me on this project for 5 years, and students, we could not wrap our head around how most of the folks we were interviewing were conservative Protestants. Not all of them, of course, but most. And we couldn't understand why in the world they would be so invested in or so attracted to, or how could that be a part of their life? Because these are people who would not walk into a bar and say, hey, baby, what's your sign? They wouldn't probably walk into a bar anyway. But they would not read astrology columns. They would not, nothing. So every time I look at a calendar like this, and this calendar comes from American Calendar Company out of Greenville, Tennessee. I don't get anything for telling you this, but I love them to death. They've been around a long time, and they are what appears on this is the same format that appeared 50 years ago in North Georgia in Rabun County, people were using this calendar. So, and it's been around even longer than that. I want to say 135 years. So there's a lot of scripture on these calendars.
There really is.
Yeah, there's the scripture about there's a time and a season. You know, God put the stars and the lights in the sky. And we have quotes from the Foxfire Group, Historical Preservation, a museum up in Rabun County. We have quotes where people are saying, well, what else would God put it up there if it weren't to use? So this is what we call deep tradition. It's not a New Age tradition. It's not a Wiccan tradition. I mean, people could, from any stripe, can certainly use this. But when we talk about Appalachia, and when we talk about how I learned it and my students learned it and the people that we learned it from in North Georgia and that southern part of North Carolina, we had some folks around Murphy helping us.
Yeah.
Then it is about God is there, God is in control, moon, stars, everything else, and so use it. It's such a part of deep culture. It's really not even articulate. So when we asked that question to our folks that were helping us, they kind of just looked at us funny. It's like, well, this is tradition. This is what we've always done. Look in the scripture. God says, and I'm not trying to baptize him because I could use going to church. But again, and trying to honor the people that we learned this from, both living and those who had passed on. This is what we found. This is
so. Thank you for explaining that, because I do know that sometimes this gets confused where this is something that's deeply against religion. And in my culture, my area is West Virginia, is like, church was every Sunday, and there was usually something going on during the week as well. And my calendars that I grew up with, heavy scripture all over the calendar. So when we say planting by the signs, again, we're not looking at the paper or online or a psychic or anything like that and looking and saying, okay, I'm a Taurus, let me read what today is going to be for my sign. And I love you always say this, and I love it. They're not going to have a person go, hey baby, what's my sign?
Never.
That's a different show.
Yeah, I'm sorry to talk over you there, but I just get so excited about this. But one, how is it that this stayed around for thousands and thousands of years? Not as a fossilized belief system, not as any kind of a doctrine that we learned in church or learned in any kind of religious studies, and it's not intact. It's little remnants of things, because folklore is a living tradition. And so I would say that what we're seeing now, if I had to say about how old it was, I'm just going to go with this calendar's been around. I think the company's in business for 135 years. So I'll stick by that.
There you go. And I think it's tried and true that these calendars that we see today and that we buy today are based on historical data as well as the planting by the signs. And they worked, because if these calendars did not work, they would not have been around for over 100 years.
And I don't know why it works.
Yeah,
it is not scientifically proven. I cannot find a single peer-reviewed article that addresses this systemically. There are scientifically peer-reviewed articles about this. Okay, I'm making this up because I can't remember the animal. I'm going to say a crab. This crab is more fertile around a certain time of the moon. Little pieces of scientific peer-reviewed articles. But to my knowledge, and if I'm wrong, send me the article, there's been no one looking at the whole system. And so think of it as a folklore task list, that if you were in your garden following the signs, planting, transplanting, repotting, tilling, clearing land, burning land, harvesting, the way you cook some things, especially if you're doing sauerkraut, canning, when do you can, when you go to the doctor, when you go to the dentist. I mean, this is a task list, certainly for your garden, but also for life. And if you're out there in your garden every day doing what the signs indicate, you're just going to have a good garden. Because you're watching after it. You're out there every day picking the bugs off or applying whatever you apply. You're doing that in the right moon phase. You're pruning at the right time. If you're pruning for growth, you want to prune when the signs are, when the moon is waxing. You want to increase. But if you're pruning because this thing's gotten out of control and you want to calm it back, you're pruning when the moon is waning. So, this isn't science, and it's not astrology. It is folklore. And yes, you could say that perhaps there are scientific elements. And yes, if a professional astrologer would look at this, they would say, yes, that's called electional astrology. That is when it's time to do things. And they would say, but what about Saturn? You're not paying attention to Saturn. What about this other planet? What about this? The nice thing about it, we don't have to know astrology to follow this calendar. It is, what is the moon doing? Where the moon is going through those signs. So,
and you bring up something interesting that I don't know if I ever thought about before until you just said it. If you follow this calendar and you're working in your garden around your house and you're looking every day at what to do, you're in your garden every day. And, it just hit me that some days I might look and say, oh, I'm only going to go for these circle days because I want to plant. But no, if you're looking at the calendar and saying, what should I do in my garden today? I need to go out in the garden and do this because the calendar says so. To me, that's a lovely thought because I'm in my garden today.
Yes. And a task list, because there are big red X's there, that is speaking to the two signs that are considered the killing sign. One is Leo, or the lion, or heart. I remember that by Heart of the Lion. And the old timers say you don't want surgery anytime ever during Leo, the heart. But I will tell you, if your doctor says this is an emergency surgery, don't check your signs. Just go straight
Do
up.
it. Do it.
So where the X's are, that means no planting, but it doesn't mean no tasks.
Yes.
So there's some great things to do in Aries, the ram, that comes around the 4th and the 5th, and it also comes around at the end of the month. And both of those times are in waning periods. So if you want to get rid of something, you're doing it when the moon is waning and when it's in a killing sign. There's old saying, it's like, don't cut a tree in Leo unless you want it to die. This would not be the time to prune. This would be the time to clear land. This would be the time to, that overgrowth that you're just fighting and beating back and beating back all the time. This is the time to get rid of it. And Aries is also, it's a great time for harvesting because it's a fiery sign. And so one of the folkloric traditions is barren or fiery signs are a good time to harvest because supposedly, or the idea is, I won't even say theory because that's a scientific word. The idea is that the energy is lower then and things will last longer that you harvest. On the back of this calendar, there's a little bit about harvesting. In the fall, we can talk about apples. When is the best time to harvest your apples? So if you see an X, that's not a day off, or it surely wouldn't have been, back in the day. There would be
not for farmers. Yeah, for farmers, there's no day off.
And when we were going through these archives in Foxfire, students spent a whole semester doing that. We were so surprised at how much was there about clearing land or how to get rid of a stump. And we would say, we want to know about planning. We're tired of all this, how to clear land. But think about it. If you got to feed your family, you got to get the land clear enough. And you're doing it with a mule and strength of people.
That's really good points.
Yeah. So here is what makes May tricky. One, I don't want to give up a single day in May. If it's a good sign, I'm going to jump on it. Okay. but here's some things. So we'll just start at the top. I've got all this written down in a handout, and I put on my Instagram and Facebook. If y'all want my Word handout, that of course I don't have now because I'm on my phone, but I will send it to you.
Also, the Instagram is down below in the description, and Rosann does a beautiful Instagram. I was laughing at your Instagram this week about something you talked about watermelon as well.
Yeah, I don't know how many people we would have gotten if we'd have said Naked Gardening Day. Folklore takes on Naked Gardening Day. I thought that was a relatively new thing. But in reading through, I love to go to Internet Archive and say folklore in Appalachia. So apparently this was a thing. It's really tongue in cheek. You know, you got to be careful when folklorists were visiting Appalachia and probably other places as well. It'd be like, I'm going to tell this college boy, I'm going to make up some stuff, and he's going to write it down, and he's going to go back and tell other college boys, and I'm the trickster. So Appalachian deep culture has a good bit of the trickster in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I love this part. You know, you got to walk back, you got to take your clothes off, you got to walk backwards. What else you got to do, Sandy? I can't read it from here.
It says, since you're raising a good crop of watermelons, one should get up before sunrise on the 1st of May, go to the field backwards, and without any clothes on, go ahead and plant the seed. This is a safer work show.
Yeah. That would have probably gotten censored. Naked watermelon planting. Yeah. So that looks like it's a little bit of sense of humor there.
It is, and I like somebody did post "Happy Naked Gardening Day" to those who partake and celebrate.
Yes. That's one of my former students.
I love it.
Yeah. And Paula, if you're here, I'm going to give you a shout out. Paula's a wonderful basket weaver, quilter. Her home place could be, I mean, she could charge tickets. It's a living history museum. So also, Paula told me this really interesting thing that she hears on her mountain where she lives. She says, plant when Crown Mountain is green all the way to the top.
Oh.
So I thought that's interesting. If you think about how, you know, our Appalachians and mountains aren't too high, and they're not too high in Georgia, but they're high enough. So if that mountain is green all the way to the top, that means the soil is warmer, certainly at the base. So, yeah.
That's it. That's an interesting. Yeah. You know, and you think about it, we think about, if you want, snow-capped mountains, you know, so when it's the crown at the top, doesn't have snow and it's green, it's brilliant.
And I don't know how Crown Mountain got its name. If you've ever come through Dahlonega, you've gone around Crown Mountain, up and over and around. And back down again. So you can remember the next time you're coming through there, you can check in the late winter and see if it's green or not. I remember Paula came to class and said, well, we can plant now. Crown Mountain is green all the way to the top. So when you see a question mark on this calendar, what you can remember is just to use your best guess, you know what the rules are, use your best guess. And sometimes you got to break the rules, because I'm going to do that this month, right? So if Pisces, did I hear that correctly, that I'm going to break the rules? Yeah, you did.
That is in the Naked Gardening, I think.
Joe, yeah. Hey, Joe. Joe's been to Dahlonega we have had many breakfasts at the Wagon Wheel. Good to see you, Joe. So on the second and third, that's Pisces. That's a watery sign. That's a top sign, coveted sign. And it comes around twice this month, actually, at the beginning and the end. But these first of every month here, not until we reach the end of the year, is gonna be when the moon is waning, when it's barely visible. And so that's that last quarter. Sometimes you'll hear it called the fourth quarter or the last quarter. And that's when you're not supposed to plant at all. So I think that's a good time to break a rule.
Oh, there we go. So you heard it. This newsflash, break the rules.
If you go by the man who said, go by the signs, Pisces is a sweet sign. On the 6th and the 7th, one of the issues with that is the 6th is the same thing. It's Taurus the bull. Taurus is, I won't say guarantee that it will drought proof your crops, because we are living in a time of climate change. And I know this for sure, not from reading peer-reviewed literature, but because when I first came to Dahlonega, we got one crop of winter greens, a leafy salad green. And by the time I left, we were getting 3 crops a year. It had heated up so much where we were. And so, of course, we know that on the 6th, that's that last day before the new moon. So it's when the energy is supposed to be the tiniest. So are you going to give up? Your Taurus that day? Taurus, the bull. On the 7th is the new moon, and I wrote at the top, the first thing I do when I look at the calendar is to find my new moon, because I want to be able to identify the moon phases. I want to know when is the new moon and when is the full moon, because if I'm planting above ground crops, I'm going to look in that area. Then I want to know where the full moon is and where when the last quarter moon is, because that's when I'm going to look for a fruitful sign to plant my below grounders. And I do want to know from the last quarter moon to the new moon, because that's when I can decide whether to break the rules or not. And this month, because it's May, I'm going to do so. I don't know if anybody's planting flower bulbs. I haven't planted a lot of flower bulbs. And then I've moved into my mom's old house, and I have discovered, I gave her an amaryllis, I can't remember how many years ago, 30 years ago, and she planted it, and it bloomed once.
Really?
Planted outside, and it bloomed. And now I cannot even get my arms around the stand of bulbs that have propagated. So I will have bulbs very, very soon. And if anybody's listening to this from Macon, my walk-in onions have walked all over the place, and they are ready to be clipped off the top, the new bulbs, because what happens is they make their bulb at the top, and they fall over, and then they grow from there. So yeah, let me get back to the calendar. I get so excited about this. If we always hear, don't plan on Sunday. I'm going to quote Paula again. She was just a wealth of knowledge to have in the class. She said, I don't know if you're there, Paula, but correct me if I'm misquoting you. What you sow, meaning sow, S-E-W, what you sow on Sunday, you'll rip out on Monday.
Oh.
So what I've read that, or other Appalachians have said, is that Sunday is ruled by the sun. So it's hot and barren by its very nature. Now, if you look on your Sundays, you got some good days on your Sundays.
I noticed that, yeah.
And people who work, I did that once upon a time, in the weekends. So do you really want to give up that Cancer? Sandy's shaking her head. She's not.
Yeah. I don't want to give it up.
So May is complicated, and May is brilliant because you've got that long line of time to plant your flowers, not just your flowers, but if you're putting out any morning glories or anything that climbs. If you need any star jasmine, please come to my house, because it has literally taken over not just my fence, but the neighbors' fences. So it doesn't need any extra help. But Virgo and Libra are called the blooming signs. And a shout out to 𝗕𝗹cie, who has an awesome Facebook page, who is from Kentucky, and he's gardening in a different zone than I am. And he learned from the people in Kentucky. There's a little bit of difference, but not much. And sometimes when people ask him why, especially about Ember Days, and I'm going to tell you, he says, I don't know. That's just what the person I learned it from told me.
And that's a deep culture. That's our culture that we have.
So we do have an Ember Day coming up. I want to say it is, let's see if I can find it.
And also for you that maybe are wondering about Ember Days, in March or February, we talked about Ember Days, and it's also linked down below in our description if you want to learn more about Ember Days. Rosann explained it all to us.
And Sandy, you found some things I didn't know either. So if you are listening to this and you say, no, that's not how I learned it, let us know. Because I know from the difference in North Georgia and Kentucky, there's a little bit of a difference. And I bet there's a difference between Kentucky and West Virginia. If you think about music, if you think about food, all the things that are part of tradition, and old time music, if you're playing something in one valley, that might be the way you play it. But a couple of valleys over, not the way they play it. And before things were written down, there's no music calendar. Before things were written down, it was part of the tradition. So Ember Day has to do with particularly the Catholic and the Episcopal Church. Now, I don't know how this relates to Appalachian tradition, because most of the people that practice in it were not of those two faiths. But it was just, don't plant on Ember Day. And we got an Ember Day coming up, and I believe it's in Scorpio. So Scorpio, again, is a top sign. Are you going to give that up?
Oh, you're right. So on the calendar tells us on the 24th and 25th, both are listed as Ember Days.
Yeah. So just use your best effort. But I always like to say, as long as you're in your garden every day, you're probably going to have a good garden. I mean, you're
a good day. Yeah.
You're paying attention, and a good day. You're paying attention. You're paying attention to, what the soil is doing, to the amount of moisture it's getting or not getting, if there's any kind of fungus coming up. And things can happen, in a garden, particularly if you're gardening using, we had a seasonal high tunnel, or it might be called a hoop house. It's like a unheated greenhouse, and you control the heat by opening and closing the sides of the structure. And one time I was late to work, and I was supposed to open that darn thing at 7 a.m, and I got there and the lettuce was fried.
Oh no! What time did you get there?
At 9. It heated up that fast.
That fast?
I mean,
wow.
It can heat. We would start growing lettuce really, really early, like February and March. We could grow things out earlier there. But by the end of April and 1st of May, even 2 hours can make a difference. So, you're paying attention to fungus gnats. You're paying attention to just, all the nasty stuff that comes up. It would be wonderful if we could just plant seeds and
boom.
Yeah. And that is the fun part. But that's not the way of it. Does anybody from the audience have any questions or comments?
Oh, I love this too. All 35 verses of Barbary Allen. And it is. I will confirm that it is a little different sounding in Kentucky and North Georgia. Actually, is very different when I heard somebody sing it in New York, in Appalachia, New York. So, and yeah, that is a thing. So I have a question for you though. I'm going to bring up my graphic, but I have a question for you, Rosann. What um, what happened during the month of April in your garden? What did you do in your garden?
I fought roots and I fought rocks and yeah, just taking out things, taking out trees. Joey talked about this. I never learned there was so much. I should have known there was a lot to all this, but just trying to get the garden beds. When I was a child, we grew a lot of our food on this little 1/4 acre. Now, we didn't grow our corn here. We had a garden to share that, or pumpkins or watermelons. And we certainly did not go to the field backward and naked. I can tell you that. But we grew a lot of our, table food here. So I'd like to get this little property back to that. Get rid of the shrubs. We worked on pruning, especially our fig trees. Dandelions go to seed. I love it. You can make dandelion wine. My grandfather made that. So,
oh, now I'm tempted.
I thought a lot about the Foxfire people, and I thought, I can go inside and put my order to Kroger and go pick it up in just a little bit, or I can even have somebody bring it to me. Aren't we weren't? I'm telling you, we weren't. And so I appreciated how hard it is to clear land. And to clear land by hand, and to try to avoid any kind of sprays. I've got dogs. The neighbor behind me has chickens. So I'm doing the thing of, putting down the tarps and putting down the boards, to drown it out by no light. So yeah, that was my garden. Sandy, what about your garden?
Well, mine was pretty simple. I've got my 2 assistants that are always with me, but the picture that you see up here, the spiky things, that was what I showed last month. And literally 2 weeks later, that hosta looks like that. I mean, I love hostas. They are so easy. And I even said last month that I needed to separate and divide them, and I forgot. So you can see where I think I could probably, from those spikes, I think I could get about 4 or 5 hostas out of the by separate and divide. Butterfly bush. Has anybody done a butterfly bush? This is my first year. And it's the little picture at the top here, and it hasn't bloomed yet that I know of. I'm not at home, so I'm not sure. But also, the other thing is, if you don't do by seed, and I was always taught, then go to your local flower or vegetable garden places. A lot of us do the big box hardware stores. Some of us are lucky that we have plant nurseries nearby too, because they will only stock what is known to grow in your area. At least that's what I was told. I'm still not positive about it because I still have a lot of failures, but the impatience and the peonies are and things like that. Those are what's really big. But you talk about Foxfire, and I'm literally 5 minutes from Foxfire right now. I'm up in Rabun County for the week, and they have probably about 4 different farmers markets up here. And one of the largest ones where they grow a bazillion tomatoes, and they ship them out as well. They are just getting ready to really be something that they could pick in about another month. They've got the early batches, and I will go there every day to look for the orange tomatoes. I love the orange tomatoes. But I got a question for you, Rosann. So we're talking about flowers and vines this month, but we can also plant vegetables during those planting days, right?
I would be careful. This is what I've been told. To be careful in the flower signs, in the blooming signs of planting vegetables, to save those from flower, to save those just for flowers. But the idea, not the theory, the idea is that things are blooming, or it causes it to bloom so strongly that you might not get enough fruit. And fruit is I don't mean apples and oranges. By fruit, I mean the cucumber. Cucumber can bloom prolifically. And if you've gardened anytime at all, we've all had that. You go look at it and you say, well, it bloomed. What happened?
Yeah.
But it didn't produce fruit. And so now this is 𝗕𝗹cie. He preaches this pretty hard. Don't plant anything but flowers and vines during those blooming signs. But again, luckily for us, Scorpio, the top sign, is coming right behind it. On I think the 21st and 22nd, right before that full moon.
You're right.
That is supposed to be the best time to plant. So hopefully
To plant vegetables. I'm going to plant my flowers during the circle, and the in the 21st and 22nd. That's Scorpio sign. I'm going to plant more vegetables.
Yes, that is the perfect veggie. Any above grounding, anything that makes its fruit above the ground. The part you can think about it is, where is the part that you eat? You know, on a potato, you don't eat the top of the potato. I mean, and of course people do at fancy restaurants. One time someone came up and said, "Oh, can I have all the little parts to your peas?" And it's like, "No, this is going to make blooms on them." Well, we garnish with that. It's like, well, no, from this garden you don't. So no, I didn't. Yeah. So it's a, and again, that could be part of the tradition of Kentucky that I have picked up for here. 𝗕𝗹cie is a writer, and he wrote a newspaper column for many years. You can Google and find it, but you can just go to his Facebook page. And he instead of showing things graphically, I just enjoy making the little Instagrams, and I have a student who helped me figure out how to make things pretty. So that's why I do it. I've also challenged myself to find, to go to the old almanacs and find a clip art from that almanac. So, and my mind just left whatever I was saying.
But
senior moment. What was I talking about?
Well, we were talking to, but I think something that was
and
really
now I can't hear you.
Oh no! Can you hear me yet?
Hear you, Sandy.
I feel like I am the cell phone commercial. Let me put up some information real quick while we see if we can get the volume back. Hold on. And so I asked you guys what you were doing as well in your garden, and I've been cutting out bramble branches off of trees to allow the trees to go grow.
Yeah.
That's really, really a good thing too, because if you don't, and I do that for my limelight hydrangeas. And we lost Rosann, but she'll be right back. So thanks for sharing that. And I love this. I managed to kill a 40-year-old rose bush and a 60-year-old rubber tree. So there's a story there, Madeline. I need to know what the story is. How did you manage to kill a 40-year-old rose bush? And then desert flowers. Desert flowers, sorry, are all I can grow. And then Joe, which one was the great question? And we've got Rosann back.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
There we go. Yeah, Rosann back. So great question. But the thing that Rosann that you mentioned that was fascinating to me was the cucumbers, because they do flower. So if I was going to cheat and say I need to plant them because they flower, but no, I need to hold off until the 21st and 22nd, because you said something on the very first webcast that we did this year. Think about, is it above ground or below ground? How do you eat as well what you're planting? And so the cucumber, I'm going to want the fruit, not the flower, even though the fruit comes from the flower.
Yes. I mean, give it a shot. Sometimes students would say, we're going to have a good bean row and a bad bean row, meaning planting it in a good sign and a bad sign. And I'd say, sure, see what happens. So even on the back of this calendar, speaking of flowers, I do want to point this out. This last thing is that if you want to save the seeds from your flower, so you're going to plant seeds now, and you're going to save them later. And luckily, my mother, when I cleaned out her freezer, she had just saved so many of her flower seeds over the years. Wow. So you want to plant that not in the first quarter. You want to plant that in the second quarter. So how you find that is you of course, you go to your new moon, and the next moon phase is going to be your first quarter. So from that first quarter, from the new moon to the first quarter moon, that's the first quarter. So if you want to save these seeds, it's better to try to hold off and plant them from the first quarter to the full moon. And I can, if anybody's interested in that, I can take a picture of what's on back of the calendar for that.
Buy the calendar. Definitely buy the calendar. You will love it. Like Rosann said, we make no money off this. We love the calendar.
And there are a lot of different kind of calendars. I do want to warn you is that the calendars have gotten smaller, but most importantly, the instructions are sometimes not included. So I knew an elder once whose mother in her 90s started realizing that about 20 years ago, and she'd saved all the backs of the calendars with the instructions on it. And he brought them to class and showed it to us one day. Make sure your calendar has the instructions. Now, having said that, the instructions are difficult and they're kind of convoluted on the back. And I've read them about 1 million times and actually made a spreadsheet. But it does address it. Again, these things haven't changed literally for 50 years. So sometimes the language is a little bit old fashioned and flowery, but it's a material artifact. You could think of it as, not just intangible folklore, what we think or believe or listen to, but tangible folklore. These calendars are part of folklore tradition. Sandy, that's why I love that calendar that you got. Was found in an old factory.
Yes, that's on our sign. It's a old factory in Maryland from 1950s, still there, just standing there preserved. The man owns the factory. It will never be anything except that, but he allows photographers to go in and do some pictures of the mechanics and things like that. And luckily, one of the photographers said, "This is a weird calendar. I don't know what this thing is, but it looks kind of cool. Let me take a picture of it," and graciously let us use it for our opening. So, and that kind of proves this calendar was in a workplace. My calendars were at the back door, right before you went out to the land. This calendar is in a workplace, and I just realized that they relied on it in their workplace as well.
That's a good connection. And I've really I've never looked into that, but I think when we started researching planning by the signs, I want to say we started 2014. Me and 2 other faculty members and community members and students as well. It's just gotten. At first, we went to the library. We asked the librarian, we want to do literature search on planting by the signs, and she said, "Excuse me." we could barely find anything because we didn't put in keywords like folklore or Appalachia. So now I have so much that I literally keep a spreadsheet, and I have a Trello board where I post articles that I have found, and I've learned, not so much to go to contemporary literature, but to look before 1950. And to look in all those almanacs, and to look on Internet Archive. And what is Hatha Trust? Am I pronouncing that right? All of those are anywhere where you can find the old stuff. Those are wonderful sources.
So you've given us some homework. Then we should go look at Hatha Trust and go look at the Internet Archive for our area. To look at the almanacs for our area, because as you know, Rosann and I are in a similar area. We're in North Georgia, but you might not be. So look at your almanacs in your areas to see what the differences are. And then I've got to, as we wrap up, what can we expect for next month?
So next month, of course, I think one time in Dahlonega, it was so wet, and we didn't get to plant in May. We didn't barely get to plant in June. And I was so worried about, because we had a seed garden. In other words, we planted the seeds that elders gave us, and then we grew them out, and then we redistributed them in the community. There's also a seed bank there to keep these for perpetuity. Not charging, of course. We felt strongly about that. It's also illegal to do that. Yeah, sometimes I don't break the rules. It's that's a whole nother podcast about laws surrounding seeds. But you know, it really depends on how much weather we're going to get. And that's another thing. Let me just say this first. June is much like May, a little bit complex.
A little bit complex, and
if you don't have that window of right weather, and this is what I want to stress, if the weather's not right, no sign in the world's going to make that plant do well. So it could still be too cold where you are. It could still be too wet. So pay attention to your planting zones. They have changed, and you can Google plant hardiness zone and find out where you are, and hang out with your county extension agent. He or she may plant by the signs. In fact, if they're university trained, they probably don't. But if they grew up locally, you know, they probably at least know about it. So, and they can give you, it's like, yes, I think, yeah, I would go ahead and plant, or I think I'll hold off and plant. But I think the most important thing you can do is go talk to your neighbors.
Yeah, good idea.
Go down to the equivalent of whatever is your local huddle house or waffle house or wagon wheel, and hang out at the old folks table.
Yeah.
And see what they say.
Ask questions. They love to talk about, you know,
mistakes in the garden. And if I had asked a local person about a local resource, we were trying to get manure, and students wanted to go into a barn instead of having to pick it up in the field in a truck. We could just go to the barn. Well, yeah, they could, except those thoroughbreds had been fed hay that had been treated with herbicide. And the herbicide didn't hurt the thoroughbred. It came through their digestive system, but it was all in the hay. So 1/3 of our garden did not grow. No thing. I mean, no thing for 5 years.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
5 years.
Because of what you used as a base. I'll be kind.
Sandy, I'm losing you again. And I'm going to have to head out to pick up my grandchild. So,
we will see you next month. And I was
everybody, email me if you got any questions, or direct message me.
And down below is Rosann's link. And if you have pictures of your garden, please send them to us. Link us below. Send it. We'd love to see them. Till next month. Bye, guys.